GoldenEye for the N64 was developed by a small team that had a lot going against them. Allegedly, the team was relatively inexperienced and was developing for a system that was freshly transitioning to the new frontier of 3D, without any foreknowledge to what said system would be capable of. Add to the fact that it was a film adaptation, a concept that rarely picks up traction, unless maybe it's Disney, and the thing that would truly revolutionize the first-person shooter genre was implemented only as an afterthought. Strangely, as the story goes, when asked to then do a sequel, presumably The World Is Not Enough, the team replied in kind, declining to work on another Bond game due to James Bond burnout, which I didn't even know was a thing until recently. And because of that, we never got that proper follow-up to that lightning in a bottle that was GoldenEye 64. That didn't stop EA from using the name, though. Released in 2004, GoldenEye Rogue Agent was in no way an attempt to create a successor to the original GoldenEye 64, and in every way an attempt to trick fans of that game into buying it with that name drop. And with that in mind, I'm going to now critique this game as though it were meant to be a sequel, because that's what I did as a kid. In fact, I think this was the first ever game I played that I felt ripped off by. I'm sure many other people had the same experience. Bear in mind, this was a few years before it became common knowledge that EA was a bit of a scummy company. I mean, back then I never even paid any mind to who the publisher was, unlike today. I guess ignorance truly is bliss. This game could have done with some elevator music, Just like when I was a kid, I named my file 009. I don't know why, but that's always been my favorite moniker to go by in James Bond games. Though, hilariously, 009 was the agent at the beginning of Octopussy, who died dressed as a clown. Yeah, sure, that's fitting. Also, 9 is my favorite number, but yeah, no, that works too. Canon in this game, as we'll soon see, means absolutely nothing anyway. You actually start in a simulation of the Fort Knox attack by Goldfinger, with James Bond himself at your side. And then he dies in a helicopter crash. Oh no. After failing to stop the nuclear bomb Goldfinger set up, the simulation ends, and M, voiced by Judi Dench herself, immediately kicks us out of MI6 for allowing 007 to die in the mission.
You were directly responsible for the death of 007.
Yeah, I call bullshit. I failed to see how this is in any way our fault. Yeah, it was thanks to us that the helicopter crashed and Bond fell to his death. Like what kind of stupid reasoning is that? Man, it really just goes to show how Connery is and always will be the superior Bond. I mean, he wouldn't have let something as innocuous as a helicopter crash get in his way. Your character, now a rogue agent, thank you, gets an offer from Goldfinger himself to join his evil crime syndicate and help him defeat his arch nemesis, Dr. No. So this game is essentially James Bond fan fiction. On Goldfinger's team, you've got Oddjob, Pussy Galore, even Scaramanga, voiced surprisingly by Christopher Lee himself.
This is a powerful tool indeed. Use it wisely.
Thank you, Saruman. Love you. Mwah. On Dr. No's team, it's Xenia Onatopp. Because she was in that one movie, guys. Disappointingly, there's no Jaws, Baron Samedi, whatever Christopher Walken's character was called. There's a veritable smorgasbord of memorable Bond villains they could have tossed into this mess of a plot, and honestly, if they did just go ham on the Bond villain cameos, this game would at least have been a little more entertaining. Goldfinger has a doomsday device called the Omen, which is capable of completely eradicating all living matter in its radius. How he went from planning to render the US gold reserve useless to wiping out all life in an instant is, honestly, it's a pretty big leap. Dr. No sends his goons to Goldfinger's base of operations to steal it, and the plot is basically hunting down Dr. No to get the thing back. You know how in GoldenEye, every stage always had a unique selection of weapons that you could pick up from enemies or even have secretly stashed away in a room somewhere? Well, here, the selection is lacking heavily in variety. You've got a pistol, assault rifle, full automatic, and a shotgun. It's the same in every single level, with no unique variants to spice things up. The only way to change things around is by utilizing the two-handed mechanic of the game. Any weapon, unless it's a two-hander like the assault rifle, can be equipped in either hand, allowing you to mix and match combos depending on the situation or what's available. It's a janky system that rarely feels as useful as you think it would. On a few occasions, it could feel kind of cool running from cover to cover, making on-the-fly weapon switches to take out the cannon fodder, but with what little there is to work with, I just found dual P90s are a pretty adequate solution for any situation. This can also lead to moments where you are woefully underprepared for a certain room and have to struggle your way through until one of the enemies drops something that can help you. But if you die, you're back to that crappy setup and have to try it all over again. And the shotguns frickin' suck, just don't bother using them. Yeah, no matter how tempting dual-wielding 12 gauges sounds. I think the problem is the enemies in this game are way too tanky. Like a couple of dozen shots per guy, kinda tanky. Sweet freedom. Yeah, main dome reached, alright. This guy's dome. He died. Okay, that was pretty sweet. I felt pretty awesome doing that. And not that though, I immediately ruined it. How am I missing with a shotgun? There are a few special guns in the mix, but they're all hardly worth using. There's a gun that shoots explosive darts, which is kind of cool, but the explosion radius is so weak that it only really works if you stick an enemy with it, which then a bullet is just as effective. There's a railgun, which is kind of cool because you can shoot through walls. There's an EMP gun that I think works on enemies with force fields, but it's so rare that I've never had the opportunity to test it out. There's the Venom gun, which looks like it belongs in Halo, and it doesn't kill enemies, only stuns them briefly, which I don't know why you'd want to do that instead of, just frickin' shooting them. But then there's the Omega gun. Oh, it's the Zappy gun. I remember this. This is pretty cool, if I can do it. Yeah, just instantly gib somebody. It's so fun. Now, give the game credit. Having a gun that vaporizes your enemies is pretty awesome. Until they start using the thing against you, that is. You also get a rocket launcher and a sniper rifle here and there, but they're very situational. As well as a minigun. That's always appreciated, the few times it shows up. And that's all there is as far as the weapon selection goes in this game. Where's all the classic Bond guns, right? The golden gun, grenade launcher, throwing knives, magnums, tasers. Where's the ability to just slap suckers silly? That's what I want to know. Punch him. And that brings me to the multiplayer. Unfortunately, I have no decent way of gauging how fun the multiplayer is, but I can say, for a game made in 2004, the lack of having bots to play against is just inexcusable. The character selection sucks too. There's no option to play as Bond, and you can't even play as any of the villains they have in the main story. And maybe they're unlockables, like in GoldenEye 64, but after a full playthrough of the campaign, all I got as a reward was concept art. I have to play on a harder difficulty to see Fort Knox full frontal. The maps seem like they'd be fun to play on. A lot of booby traps and places to take cover. They even tossed in the cradle in Egyptian levels. And hey, why not Atlantis or GoldenEye's Chalet? The most insane looking one is called Gears. It's just a wide hallway with little cover. Yeah, that map and throw in the Omen gun, and matches in this level would be frickin' nuts. The Funhouse map is probably the coolest as far as fan service. The whole thing is a pseudo-recreation of the gunfight in The Man with the Golden Gun. It comes complete with the sculpture of Bond and even the golden gun itself. It's a fun little attention to detail. Too bad the whole game wasn't like this. Okay, that's enough comparing it to GoldenEye, but you see what I'm getting at, right? Like, if they had just left well enough alone with the title, it would have been at least decent as a standalone game. Nothing groundbreaking, mind you, but playable. As far as why the game is even called GoldenEye, it's in reference to your character's prosthetic eye, which is gold. It also functions as a means to unlock special abilities. Throughout the campaign, Scaramanga will give you new gadgets that can be activated through the GoldenEye. Standard stuff like seeing through walls, hacking machinery at a distance, generating an impenetrable force field, and having the ability to fling enemies around the room on a whim. Even is the point of explosive barrels. That's a good shot. Holy shit. Every elevator is a secret part. Oh no! That was amazing. That was the best death in the game. Oh, that was. Yeah, I think that last one may just be something Christopher Lee picked up from another franchise. These abilities are fun to play around with, and in some cases make up for the lack of weapon variety. But it does certainly disassociate itself more with the Bond franchise by having technology that borders more on just pure magic. Also, was this Cyberpunk? I can hack guns to make them not fire? No, I don't think that's how that works. It's the kind of shit that would make Q blush. Anyway, GoldenEye's crusade against Dr. No takes the rogue agent to all kinds of strange places. 10 out of 10, can gong. Some are familiar to the Bond series, like Vegas. Can I kill the helicopter with my pistol? Ooh. Wait. Yeah, that's right. Fucking jackpot. Right, that's something Bond would say. And next door to Vegas is the good old Hoover Dam. So I guess you can say this GoldenEye game also has its own dam level. Yeah, it kind of blows my mind that the Hoover Dam hasn't shown up in any of the Bond movies. It's a pretty iconic American landmark, It's not even in Diamonds Are Forever do you get it. I've been to the Hoover Dam a couple of times, and it's exactly like this. There's scaffolding everywhere and explosive barrels. It's pretty crazy. I'm surprised it took them this long to make an action sequence. I've lived a lot of my life near the dam and have visited it on many occasions, so I can appreciate how accurate its depiction is playing this game again. Does that mean Fort Knox actually looks like that?
Security alert! Odd job spotted in the West Spillway. All B-team units respond immediately. Lockdown protocol still in effect. Security alert!
That's straight up just a picture of the actual monument. Caution, area. Alright. But what also blows my mind with this level is the sheer number, just the absolutely disgusting amount of tanks they loaded into this game. So let's talk about the rocket launcher, called the Harpoon. It takes exactly 2 rockets to down a single tank in this game, and in multiple instances in this level, you are faced with 2 tanks next to where the Harpoon spawns. And how many shots does the Harpoon come with? 3. Why the hell would they do that? You couldn't just shove a 4th one in there? You couldn't just have the main character carry around an absurd amount of rockets to reload the thing with? What, were you afraid of how unrealistic that would be? I have a distinct recollection of Kid Me raging at this part, and it's so funny to yet again find it the most annoying part of the game.
Don't die yet. I haven't kept my promise.
Without proper context, that seems really fucking weird. And Xenia once again finds her demise thanks to a helicopter crash here. It's kind of anticlimactic. Just like Oddjob's death.
Am I gonna flood Vegas? Also, I just killed Oddjob. What? Hello? Context? Game? Anybody?
Also, why did Oddjob attack me? Weren't we on the same team? And Goldfinger has absolutely nothing to say about this, by the way.
Appear to be in a laboratory for armor fabrication. From the scale of this operation, I would judge Dr. No could supply a substantial army. The terminal's in this lab may contain...
I could have told you that. You seeing this shit?
The most interesting level, though, is called the Octopus. It may be a reference to Octopussy, another villain mysteriously absent from the game. But the location is an underwater base facilitating a massive black market organization that supposedly all Bond villains just kind of hang out at and buy weapons. You even get to use Goldfinger's money to buy yourself some sweet A-tier military weaponry.
You have the navigation coordinates. Now get out of there and stop spending my money!
This level's pretty rad. Not so much in gameplay, but in the implication. I love the idea of a story where there are no good guys, there's no MI6 or whatever, and instead it's just the constant backstabbing and infighting between the evil masterminds behind all the world domination schemes. You're not an anti-hero. You're just as much a villain as Oddjob, or I guess to a lesser degree, Pussy Galore is.
You can't take them all on. Grab the cable and we'll get you out.
What do you mean I can't? You see what I'm carrying right now? Don't be such a wimp, pussy.
And your enemies aren't the good guys, but just the henchmen of another nefarious criminal. And you're gunning each other down in a fancy underground facility built up to sell weapons to the other evildoers. It's just such a cool idea. And I feel like we need more games that dive into that kind of setting. Preferably ones that aren't so buggy. Oh yeah, and the enemy programming.
Why don't you fuckers die? Yeah, like that. That was amazing.
Maybe it's the clunky controls, but these guys can be by far the most obnoxious enemies in any game I've played.
Yeah, you hide behind your Tonka truck. That's what I fucking thought.
Aside from the fact that they can take a million bullets before finally going down, they also refuse to stand still at times, and will constantly run back and forth between cover.
Oh, you son of a bitch. Come on. Really? You're gonna make me use this? What? You fucker! Damn it! My god, the AI's annoying. Quit moving!
Yeah, this is where having the magic GoldenEye abilities come in handy, I guess. And the ability to take enemies as body shields. That can also come in handy, and is also really fun to play around with.
There we go. And then, in the acid you go. Yeah, standard roof acid. Hello? There. Aw, dang it, it was said that correctly. Hey, buddy. You know what? I apologize. No, can we talk? Let's talk this out. Hey, you get out of my way. Let's talk this out, man. Come on, let's be friends. Give me a hug.
Eventually, Goldfinger sends the rogue agent over to Dr. No's island to finish the job. And if this was a James Bond fanfiction worth its salt, there would definitely be a giant mechanical dragon that breathes fire. But alas. Huh. Must be a male building. Tell by the balls. Instead, it's more of the same. And even Dr. No's fight is just a series of hacking computers and fighting off bullet sponges while waiting for the ability to recharge.
More like Dr. No More. Hey, alright.
Of course, we're not done here, as Goldfinger double-crosses the rogue agent by leaving him to die on Dr. No's island. Thankfully, we're saved by good old Vagina Aplenty, who gives us a ride back to Goldfinger's base. This is the level where the Omen gun comes into play, and suddenly the fear of one-hit kills takes over any other gaming instincts you might have picked up playing the rest of the game. Now you just want to take it slow and easy. But no, you can't do that, because now there's a bunch of massive rooms filled to the brim with named bad guys with their own personal force field, and you have almost nowhere to hide to pick your targets and avoid the slow-moving blue orbs of death. And it just keeps going.
Still moving. God damn it.
Also, there's a side objective involving freeing some of Goldfinger's henchmen, which he held prisoner. I don't get it. I mean, it makes just as much sense as deciding to kill your one-man army after he spent the whole game proving his undying loyalty.
Even as we speak, the airlock where you stand is being vacuum sealed. Soon, you will feel delirious, and before long, you will suffocate.
Boy, I'm already there.
Goldfinger gets his comeuppance, and the rogue agent discovers why she's called Pussy Galore. It's because she's great at sex. I couldn't think of a joke there. Oh, and we do get a somewhat interesting setup where it turns out Scaramanga was really working for Blofeld, who had actually orchestrated the war between Goldfinger and Dr. No. And then Scaramanga learns why he's called Blofeld. Yeah, in all seriousness, I wish we got more of him in this game. I mean, he is the quintessential Bond villain. He's the only one who's shown up in more than one movie and can reasonably be called Bond's arch nemesis. Also, his cat is an amazing actor. Just look at that performance. Overall, even when not looking at it as a cheap GoldenEye nostalgia bait, it has its moments, but ultimately it just is an underwhelming first-person shooter at the core of it that came out at a time where there were already heaps of underwhelming first-person shooters. I wish I could say the multiplayer made up for the lack of a good single player, but it remains to be seen. I wouldn't recommend it to GoldenEye fans, James Bond fans, or even people who enjoy first-person shooters. And if they fail in those regards, what else does it have left? I think I basically summed it all up at the end of my live stream of this game.
Yeah, me too. It's a game. It's a product of its time, honestly. And its time being when gaming companies thought people were still really jonesing for that they want something to scratch that GoldenEye itch. And just did a whole bunch of weird shit to try to do it.
We did kind of sort of get the mythical GoldenEye 64 successor that everybody kind of assumed would eventually happen, but not until 2010, a whole 13 years after the original. And believe it or not, this and Twilight Princess, I think, are the only two games I ever played on the Wii. Yeah, true story. Apparently, after the game came out and was a raging success, the IP fell into licensing hell. Nintendo, of course, published the original game and held the rights to anything that came close to a remaster or spiritual successor. Rare was the developer, but was since acquired by Microsoft, and MGM Studios held the rights to the 007 name itself. For a game like this to be made acquired the approval of all three of these juggernauts, and perhaps not so surprisingly, Nintendo reportedly was the one that caused the biggest roadblock. Not wanting Microsoft to release a new game they had a claim on for the Xbox 360, which is exactly what happened to a supposedly fully functional remaster that was made in 2007. Nintendo just didn't agree with the choice of platform. Now that's all the information I found when researching the ins and outs of this story, but that may explain why when we finally did get the golden goose that is the GoldenEye 64 remaster, it was on a Nintendo console, and is not a remaster, nor would I call it a spiritual successor. Maybe it was to appease MGM, or maybe as a misguided attempt to keep the game relevant, The Bond we have this time is Daniel Craig, not Pierce Brosnan, and the story has been retooled to fit a more modern Bond style and story arc. In short, I think it stinks, but I am infinitely fascinated with how this game sort of works as a facsimile to the original, right? Just give it enough tweaks and that alternate reality, like the GoldenEye we could have gotten instead kind of feel. It's so strange when you really think about it. It's a remake of a game that was based on a movie. So in a way, it's also a remake of the movie itself, just in game form. Yeah, you have a real life set from the movie, then a blocky reinterpretation of the set on the N64, and then years later, another reinterpretation, not of the movie set, but instead of the blocky recreations of said set. It's like a copy of a copy, you know? Like if they ever remastered this for whatever reason, it wouldn't even look close to the original source material. Though to be fair, we're already kind of there with this game. Look, I'll just get this out now. I'm not the biggest fan of the Daniel Craig Bond. It's just too identical to every other spy action movie we'd been getting up to that point. It feels like they weren't innovating the genre, instead parodying the movies that did what they used to do, just better. But that being said, I wanted to focus on the changes that were made between this game and the original, and I guess probably more interesting, what remained the same. The very first section of this map is almost a one-for-one recreation of the first area of the original game. The only difference being that 006 is now tagging along with James as they make their way into the facility. And no, that's not Sean Bean. But I guess with this being a remake, it wouldn't make sense trying to bring back the original cast in any capacity, except for Judi Dench.
Has been stealing Russian military equipment and selling it on the black market.
Yeah, she's still here. A neat little detail is that this time, instead of following the mysterious green truck that seems to have no problem with you slaughtering all the guards around it, James and Alec themselves drive the thing in an attempt to sneak in cleanly, which doesn't work out.
Комуди гостя? Почему я никогда не видел тебя? Ты новый?
Переведен.
Давайте документы. Я сказал, выходи из грузовика.
Let's get out of here, Alec.
Oh, and if it seems like I'm flailing around a lot, it's because I played the first few levels with the Wiimote and nunchuck controls, before eventually switching to the regular controller. Yeah, the one other time I played this game, it was with one of my older brothers on multiplayer, and he just annihilated me because I could not, nor am I still able to, wrap my head around motion controls. Almost instantly in this game's story, Bond catches a glimpse of the EMP-proof copter and becomes obsessed with getting more intel on the thing. Oh yeah, you get to do a little bit of hacking in this game too, only instead of something cool like a watch or, I don't know, a shoe, you instead utilize your smartphone. Oh man, how futuristic. Just the idea of spies using smartphones to gather intel is hilarious to me. Something as massive as MI6 with the budget they presumably have. I mean, yeah, sure, it's high-tech and all, but it's also a common civilian item that can be easily hacked or corrupted. I just find it funny how, like, infinitely less secure this high-tech alternative is to, I don't know, just having a disposable camera. I don't know. Maybe it's the idea of Q having to go to the AT&T store to supply his agents that I just can't get over. In the end, Bond doesn't bungee jump off the dam, but instead free falls off the thing. And then he dies. No, he somehow survives that. But man, for a supposedly gritty reboot, they sure throw realism to the wind, don't they? It's here we get the theme song, a complete remake of the original Tina Turner song.
See reflections on the water, more than darkness in the depths.
This time it's being sung by a Nicole Scherzinger, whoever that is. But it is a pretty solid cover, don't get me wrong. I was actually quite impressed by it. From here on, nothing will look even close to the original, like that first part of the dam level. And the facility is where it really slaps you in the face. This place is massive, full of elaborate hallways, a large chasm with catwalks going over it. The room with the gas tanks is now flooded with coolant. Only 10 minutes into the game, and it's already stopped feeling like it has anything to do with the classic. Not that every remake or remaster needs to do that, but you think with a game so beloved they would at least throw the fans of the original a bone now again with a wink and a nod. But again, I appreciate the added bits of 007 and 6 working together to fulfill their mission. Not something you get to see a lot of in the Bond franchise. And it helps to give more of an emotional connection between the two characters when Alec bites the bullet. Oh yeah, and speaking of, this version still doesn't give any solid explanation as to how he survived a shot to the head. Again, either this was all an elaborate ruse in the first place, or Ormov just had a blank for that shot, even though he had used the real bullet previously. Was that guy fake too? Was he pretending? I don't know, that whole plot point just confuses me, even in the movie. Oh man, I'd like to see speedrunners beat this bastard in 27 seconds. Certainly a longer and more elaborate mission than its predecessor, where it's just a straight shot to the objective, and no tank hidden in the corner here either. They do reincorporate the bike scene from the movie though. This is also where I hilariously panicked for some reason and shot a fire extinguisher right in front of me. I mean, I see a red square and I shoot it. What more do you want from me? After this sequence of levels, we'd originally head to the surface, the bunker, even a flashback to a silo. But instead, in this game, Bond immediately makes his way to... Now, in the 64 game, Valentin Zukovsky, played by Hagrid in the movie, gets a few cameos here and there as he helps out Bond in his search for the Yanis crime syndicate. This represents the scene in the movie where Bond meets him at his club in Russia and makes fun of his mistress who can't sing, played by Minnie Driver. Now, in gritty Daniel Craig form, we get Valentin's club as a genuine level. Only this time we're in Spain. Bond had previously given Valentin a scar, not a limp, and the dude looks like a reject from the Kingsman movies. This is a massive problem I have with the updated look of this game. Why the hell do all the characters look so young and baby-faced? Valentin's supposed to be a rich and badass Russian mafioso, and yeah, in this game, he looks more like an underage kid who would sneak into this kind of club, not someone who owns it. This level starts with Bond just being a normal dude, and not a killing machine, walking around and hitting up his contact meant to help him get an audience with Valentin. Man, and these featureless dancing silhouettes they're kind of creepy. Valentin eventually, and for seemingly no reason, tells Bond where he can find his EMP-hardened copter.
Go to the arms fair in Dubai.
Now in the movie, Valentin sets Bond up to meet with Xenia, an agent of Yanis. But in this game, it seems he was the one who got set up. The level then shifts into what you'd expect in a Daniel Craig James Bond game. Just a violent shootout in an overly stimulating environment. Also, I think someone remembers. I'm glad at this point I finally caved and switched off the Wiimote controls. Like, the difference between the two is day and night. Club. Bond once again meets with a contact before all hell breaks loose at an arms fair. This time, the contact is a dude with a thick American accent.
If it moves, we'll kill it. By the way, see anything you like, I can probably swing a professional discount.
Is he meant to be a replacement for Jack Wade in the movie? Regardless, things go south again as the Yanis Syndicate gets there before 007, and the fight makes its way onto the frigate itself. No more hostages to save here, but we are introduced to a fun new mechanic where you can hack drone guns to fight for you. Well, I guess these arms aren't so fair. Bond still fails to catch the copter, only being able to place a tracker on it, and now the thing turns on him and begins destroying the ship in the process. Fortunately, Bond is surrounded by water, and we all know that shit makes him immune to death. This place is certainly a lot less flat than I remember, and not nearly as dark and foggy. I don't know, maybe it was supposed to be a bad snowstorm. Something I hadn't brought up yet is the interesting mix of stealth and action shooter in this game. Most of these levels have opportunities where you can sneak your way through huge chunks of the level, and if you make a mistake at one of these sections, it simply just turns into a shooting segment. It's kind of a brilliant way of designing a spy game, where it's more or less up to the player to decide if they want to go in quietly or guns blazing. Failing at stealth isn't an instant reset, just another way of moving forward. I do find it ironic that this game, of all games, lets you actually feel like you're being a spy, especially compared to the original, where it's just run and gun, because, you know, Daniel Craig's Bond is like the antithesis, practically, of sneaky spy. Anyway, as Bond makes his way to the satellite bunker, the EMP goes off and chaos ensues. Unfortunately, despite these guys having suffered a traumatic attack, yeah, Bond still needs to complete his mission. Genuinely feels kind of shitty that you still have to dispatch some of these guys even though they're all injured and limping around with no idea what's going on. Further up ahead though, there seems to be a firefight between, I think, Oromov's men and the bunker security. It's not made very clear. At any rate, we start gunning these guys from behind without any sense of mercy too, and then hilariously proceed to quickly wipe out the guys they were exchanging fire with relative ease. So even though the game incorporates a fair amount of spy espionage, the game still suffers at times from one-man army syndrome. Inside the bunker, we get a more accurate look at what the place would have looked like if Bond made it there after Oromov. The place is a wreck, there's a constant ambiance of people screaming and gunshots ringing out. Yeah, these guys clearly didn't minimize the scientist casualties. And here we still meet Natalia. And I don't mind how they changed the way she looks in this game. That is to say, they barely changed the way she looks at all. Her game counterpart looks like a decent reinterpretation of the original actress. And hey, she goes off on her own. No babysitting her this time around. Okay, this game gets a point for that. And I gotta point out this central room that I found with a single table and a blueprint of some sort on it. Now throughout the game it'll warn you of times you want to whip out your phone to take pictures of important information and things like that. But here, the game didn't want me to take a picture of it, even though it's the most conspicuous thing in this entire level. I don't know, am I crazy for assuming that this would be important? The bunker eventually starts going up again, for some reason, and we have to make a daring and explosion-filled escape. What? The window to this door is bulletproof, what the hell? And I gotta give these henchmen credit. Even when running for their lives out of an inferno, they'll still stop to take potshots at the suspicious British guy in the room with them. After Bond and Natalia escape, they're immediately arrested by the Russian government, which originally took place after the statue level. Mishkin is yet another casualty of this game, replacing a character with super young-looking people. Dude is meant to be Russia's frickin' defense minister. Why does he look like he's gonna start explaining to me how cryptocurrency works? And this is the second time Bond's ended up having to fight his way out of a situation after someone ran off claiming he killed somebody. It must be the MO of the Yanis Syndicate. In this level we get a shotgun, and oh yeah, now this is how a shotgun should work. I can actually kill someone with one shot of this thing, like, go figure.
Get off me, you pig!
Hey, I clearly had Oromov shot there. Come on, game. After he gets away, we get a Left 4 Dead style survival section, fighting off hordes of enemies while waiting for the elevator. And what do you know? Still no elevator music. And no epic leap through a window either. They just happen to have a tank parked inside, why not? This level is pretty fun. It's your standard vehicle section of any game, but it's nice to play a tank mission in GoldenEye that isn't loaded with street blockades and landmines or enemies loaded to the gills with rockets. And we do get a pretty good Bond line here.
Bond to MI6, I need you to track a Humvee through the streets of St. Petersburg. It's the one being chased by a tank.
It's funny how this carnage all seems entirely contained within a construction yard with not a single civilian in sight. Yeah, so much for Daniel Craig being the grittier Bond. These two levels actually barely exist in this game. The train doesn't take off from a depot, but the same massive construction yard. I guess they just had a train laying around. And Bond almost instantly derails it and makes it to the cabin holding Ourumov and Natalia just moments later. No Alec yet, but that's because we haven't uncovered him as Yanis in this version of the story. Ourumov does still meet his demise here, but Xenia gets the honor. Well, that's lame. You think Bond would still feel like he had a score to settle with Ourumov, or at least have something to say about having his supposed revenge taken away from him by an assassin. Because remember, he doesn't know that Alec is still alive and is now a bad guy, which is why Ourumov's death seems so inconsequential in the original movie and game. But here it feels like it should have been given a bit more gravitas. Xenia is truly a nefarious assassin. Not only killing major characters, but also the potential for any emotional drive in the plot. So we still get our statue level. A bit misplaced compared to the original's lineup of missions, but a part that holds the most important scene in the story, so it makes sense they wouldn't skip it. This time it's nowhere near as maze-like as it was in the original too, which I do appreciate. There's even a night vision goggles section that's pretty cool. Man, these guys are really wasteful with their glow stick placements. Or maybe they scared off a rave that was going on in the sewers. And no, I don't know how or why I didn't see the very obvious camera above me here. I look like a real idiot. Eventually, we get the fated meetup where Bond learns that the leader of the Yanis crime syndicate is, in fact, a still alive 006. And the voice acting here is not great.
Hello, James. Alec. You're alive. No thanks to you.
It is nice that we still get the cinematic villain reveal in this game, but the significance of this location to the themes of the movie, you know, how Russia was going through significant changes since the fall of the Soviet Union, and the significance of Yanis being the name of a two-faced Roman god that represents great change. Yeah, all that is now lost, and this real-life location is just being used as another action set piece. The whole Lien's Cossack angle has been completely gutted from this version of the story. Alec is just a rotten bastard that wants to take over the world, or something. Honestly, his evil scheme in the original movie wasn't great either, but at least he had a solid motivational story. And then after that, they apparently kept the elaborate death trap, which I hilariously died to. Yeah, it took me a second, but you just have to look to your left to headbutt the ejector button. Like in that one movie. No R&R or TLC with Natalia's TNA in this story. She's still being held captive by Yanis, so Bond is going alone into the jungle. Man, look at that draw distance though. Oh, it's magical. And it's so satisfying to be able to hack the drones this time. They're easily the biggest pain in the ass from the original game. And here they're a joke. Like, look at this. You could even get away with running in front of them briefly. And the game kept the Xenia fight on a bridge. Hey, you guys remember QuickTime events? On a weird side note too, this jungle is in Africa, not South America. Don't know why they felt the need to change that. I guess the game designers figured this room needed a little bit more natural lighting, you know? An open air concept, if you will. It is quite lovely. I mean, Bond villains appreciate sunshine too, I'm sure. There is an interesting little change here, where instead of taking Bond's watch, knowing that it's been souped up with gadgets, Alec checks Bond's phone, which has a very suspicious green and red button prompt on it for the explosives he planted earlier. And see, this is what I meant by the idea of phones being the future of spy gadgetry, just being really stupid. But the fun thing here is Alec calls Bond's bluff that he might have switched the buttons around. And it seems that Alec chose correctly, but it actually turns out that Bond cleverly put the thing on a timer. See, I don't mind when the story makes those kinds of changes. It still gets the idea across of an ex-MI6 agent disarming Bond and having an idea of what all of his tricks are. Again, it pays off when the game gives you those extra bits of them working together and gives you a fuller picture of Alec's life in MI6. And I just now realized there's no Boris in this game. I can only imagine what they would have done with his character. You know, some zoomer who's always on his phone or something. Oh man, and you know what part from the N64 game that absolutely needed to stay in? That's right, the Natalia escort mission. Everyone's favorite. In this one, you even get the added bonus of there being voice acting. So not only is she a pain in the ass to keep safe, but you also get to hear her be a massive liability.
I need more time. Quickly, James, they're coming.
By the time the mission transitions into the cradle segment, there's suddenly a solar gun that constantly takes shots at you. Is that the GoldenEye? I thought it was an EMP weapon. How is it blowing pieces off of scaffolding? This is actually more akin to what the Golden Gun was. It turns out it was a solar-powered laser, right? And now that I think of it, did the game even explain what the GoldenEye is? It's kind of a big deal, you know, being the title of the game and all. At any rate, the game this time makes the final showdown with Trevelyan a first-person shooter boss fight, where he has a ridiculous amount of health and an endless supply of goons to throw at us. Though it does seem pretty unfair for 006 in the long run. Bond gets the first-person shooter hero bullet wound regen ability, while Alec just gets stuck with a health bar. Bond does keep his line before Alec plunges to his death.
For England, James.
No. For me.
And Natalia still shows up to save him after holding a helicopter pilot at gunpoint. Wait, but who the hell are these guys? Are these the Marines? Yeah, that's nice and all, but where did they come from in this version of the story? Yeah, you kind of dropped the whole CIA angle in this one. And that's the single-player campaign. No Aztec or Egyptian level, unfortunately. Yeah, but at least this game's multiplayer had the wherewithal to include most of the Bond villains from the original. And they even added Blofeld. No games against bots again, though. Am I crazy, or was this not a common feature in multiplayer, especially back in the PlayStation 2 era? Whatever. The game, for what it is, isn't terrible, but it certainly doesn't capture the innovation and genre-defining features the original had. It's a very standard-looking and very standard-feeling first-person shooter game. I guess the inclusion of motion controls notwithstanding. One complaint I do have with the gameplay itself, though, is Bond inexplicably going cross-eyed whenever reloading a gun. But hey, this game at least doesn't have infinitely respawning enemies. That's always a plus. And this whole idea that if it's Daniel Craig as Bond, then everything needs to be grittier is just really dumb design philosophy to me, because the original GoldenEye was already pretty damn gritty. A story about betrayal, both fictional and historical, the deaths of dozens of innocent people, also a woman that has sex with you to death. Yeah, that's a face that stuck with me for a while. I mean, if anything, this version of the story took the grittiness out of the movie. And sure, the original game took some liberties with the plot and rearranged or altered a few things, like Bond personally being at the satellite in Russia when it gets EMP'd, or having a flashback to his previous encounter with Oramov. But this game just takes the bare plot points and wholly recreates a different story out of it. Which I wouldn't mind so much if, again, it didn't feel so disconnected from the original that it was intending to capitalize on, and didn't seem to make changes that detract from the story and make it feel like a disjointed mess of locations and gunfights. Once again, it's this issue of the game being fine, but when you put the GoldenEye label on it, you kind of made it worse. But maybe this is all just me looking back on the N64 game with rose-tinted glasses. Maybe to those who never even touched the original, these two games were enough to satiate that James Bond shooter simulation experience. And I just figured, as a fan of the original game and movie, it would be interesting to take a look at where the brand went and if the changes made were necessary or a complete waste of programming power. I'd lean towards the latter, but as we learn from the fall of Soviet Russia, change is inevitable, right? For better or for worse. So while we keep those memories of a time long gone, James Bond, as always, will return. Thank you all so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. If you've played any of these games and want to share any thoughts of your own, feel free to leave a comment in the comments section, or like the video if you want to support the channel, subscribe even. If you want to further support the channel, you can always check out my other videos, especially if you haven't seen my GoldenEye movie review, or even videos talking about some of my favorite video games like this one. So yeah, thanks for watching.